Bing bongy bong, bing bongy bong. Welcome to Bud Mouse. This is Joe, the bearded historian. He'll tell you an interesting history. Be careful of his soldiers, they can be brats. This is Angel, she's an entity. She'll cause chaos and plant her hands at you. This is Sue, she likes spirits, not the alcohol. She's the reason this channel exists. This is David, he likes fire trucks. He's here occasionally. Bing bongy bong, bing bongy bong, bing bongy bong. We preserve his story. Welcome to our unboxing video for Wayback Wednesday. Because we got our Temu order. This is just two freebies that we randomly selected. We kind of forgot what I selected.
Yeah. Oh, I swear to God, if I sneeze right now, I'm gonna kill somebody. I swear to God, if I sneeze, I don't want to sneeze. Okay. I think I'm fine. I'm so excited. We've been wanting to check it out and everything. Unless they're unboxing it, or I'm begging it.
I'm begging it. It's our first unbegging. Do we need scissors?
I did not want people getting into this.
I mean, that's goodish.
Yeah.
Hercules!
Okay, I don't know what corners did to them, but Temu says fuck the corners. Give me the hole, 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 give me the hole. Don't take that out of context.
Very out of context. Alright, there's one.
Do I get special packaging?
Which is going to be hard to open again.
Oh, well.
Oh. Interesting.
Strong.
Oh, it's so cute.
Oh, you put it apart.
You put it apart? Not everybody, you don't put the shelf together. You put it apart.
They got like in the store.
Take that out. Edit both of those moments out.
That's very cute. I'm guessing it's unvarnished.
I don't like it. I don't like it. Oh, I need a good texture. Oh, heaven. Oh,
Angel?
What? Ma'am. Ma'am. I guess you could say he's a little excited to see her. He's got some morning wood.
Nightwood.
Oh God, it's fucking Rasan from A Court of Thorns and Roses.
Hang on a second. And there it is all together. Her large.
What does this small one look like?
I'm gonna get small. Did we get large? I thought we got large.
Oh, we got large.
I'm pretty sure we got large. I'll have to look.
Yeah. He's so cute.
He's very cute. We'll have to find a way to hang him up, though.
Yeah.
But you can put, like, little potions or something there.
Yeah. Little spell jars.
All right. You want to say goodbye?
Goodbye.
You have a story for us, Mr. Bud?
I have a story to take and to elucidate, and share some knowledge with.
There's knowledge attached?
Knowledge attached.
Damn it.
I know. Because we're going to go back to 1860.
Back in time.
Just a few years. Back when, ships were the primary source of transportation, moving of goods, moving of people. Anyway, this first story here is about a ship that, needless to say, it became more famous after the Americans got control of it. But this ship was originally called the Amazon. It was laid out to be designed and built in, again, 1860 in the village of Spencer's Island on the shores of the Bay of Fundy, Nova Scotia, in the shipyard of Joshua Dewis. Now, the ship was constructed of locally felled timber with 2 masts and was rigged as a brigantine. She was Carvel built and the hull planking flush rather than overlapping, and was launched of May 18th, 1861, and registered at nearby Parsboro on June 10th of 1861. Registration documents described her as 99.3 feet in length, 25.5 feet in broad, and depth 11.7 feet, and 198.42 gross tonnage. She is owned by a consortium of 9 people, headed by Dewis. Among the co-owners was Robert McLean, the ship's first captain. Well, for her first maiden voyage, the Amazon sailed to 5 islands, Nova Scotia, to take on a cargo of timber for a passage across the Atlantic to London. After supervising the ship's loading, Captain McClellan fell ill and his condition worsened. The admiral returned to Spencer's Island, where McClellan died on June 19th. John Nutting Parker took over as captain and resumed the voyage to London, in the course of which Amazon encountered further misadventures. She would collide with fishing equipment in the Narrows off Eastport, Maine, and after leaving London, ran into and sank a brig in the English Channel. This doesn't sound like a ship that's got high hopes.
It's got really bad luck.
Yeah. Now, Parker remained in command for 2 years, during which the Amazon worked mainly in the West Indies in trade. She would cross the Atlantic to France in November of 1961, and in Marseille was the subject of a painting, possibly by Honoré de Pellegrin, a well-known maritime artist of the Marseille School. In 1863, Parker was succeeded by William Thompson, who remained in command until 1867. These were the quiet years for the Amazon. An Amazon's mate later recalled that, "We went to the West Indies, England, and the Mediterranean, what we call the foreign trade. Not a thing unusual happened." October 1867, at Cape Breton Island, the Amazon was driven ashore in a storm and was so badly damaged that her owners abandoned her as a wreck.
No.
On October the 15th, she was acquired as a derelict by Alexander McBean of Glace Bay, Nova Scotia. Well, within a month, McBean sold the wreck to a local businessman who, on November 1868, sold it to Richard W. Haynes, an American mariner from New York. Haynes paid $1,750 for the wreck and then spent almost $9,000 restoring it. That's some pretty good money back then.
That's not too bad, but never mind.
Yeah. He made himself her captain, and in December of that year, he registered with the collector of the Port of New York as an American vessel under a new name.
Oh, no, not a new name.
Mary Celeste. Now, in October of
His wife, his girlfriend, his mistress.
somebody that we don't know.
Just saying.
Yeah. In October of 1869, however, the ship was seized by Haynes's creditors and sold to a New York consortium headed by James H. Winchester.
Winchester Brothers.
Yep. During the next 3 years, the composition of the consortium changed several times, although Winchester remained at least a half share throughout. No record of Mary Celeste's trading activities during this period have been found, and in early 1872 the ship underwent a major refit, costing another $10,000, which enlarged her considerably. The length was increased to 103 feet, the breadth was increased to 25.7 feet, and her depth to 16.2 feet. Among the structural changes, a second deck was added. An inspector's report refers to the extensions on the poop deck,
Poop deck,
new transoms, and a replacement of many timbers. The work increased the ship's tonnage to 282.28. On November the 29th, 1872, the consortium was made up of the Winchesters with 6 shares, 2 minor investors with 1 share apiece, and the remaining 4 of 12 shares being held by the ship's new captain, Benjamin Spooner Briggs. Spooner! Now, Benjamin Briggs was born in Wareham, Massachusetts, April 24th, 1835, one of 5 sons to Sea Captain Nathan Briggs. All but one of the sons went to sea, 2 becoming captains. Benjamin was an observant Christian who read his Bible regularly and often bore witness to his faith at prayer meetings. 1862, he married his cousin, Sarah Elizabeth Cobb.
Well, that's good.
That's good. And enjoyed a Mediterranean honeymoon aboard the schooner Forest King, his schooner. 2 children were born, Arthur September 1865 and Sophia Matilda on October 1870. Now, by the time of Sophia's birth, Briggs had achieved a high standing within his profession. He considered retiring from the sea to go into business with the seafaring brother Oliver, who had also grown tired of the wandering life. They did not proceed with this project, but each invested his savings in a share of a ship. Oliver invested in the Julia A. Hallock and Benjamin the Mary Celeste. On October of 1872, Benjamin took command of the Mary Celeste for her first voyage, and following the extensive New York refit, which was to take her to Genoa in Italy. He arranged for his wife and infant daughter to accompany him, while his school-aged son was left at home in care of his grandmother. Now, Briggs chose his crew for the voyage with care. First mate Albert G. Richardson was married to a niece of Winchester and had sailed under Briggs before. Second mate Andrew Gilling, aged about 25, was born in New York and was of Danish extraction. The steward, newly married, Edward William Head, was signed on with a personal recommendation from Winchester. The 4 general seamen were from Germans from the Frisian Islands, the brothers Volkert and Boz Lorenzen, Arian Martins, and Gottlieb Goodschall. A later testimonial described them as peaceable and first-class sailors. In a letter to his mother shortly before the voyage, Briggs declared himself eminently satisfied with ship and crew. Sarah Briggs informed her mother that the crew appeared to be quietly capable if they continue as they have begun.
Whatever that means.
Yeah. Basically, if they just keep doing their jobs, we're all safe and good.
Oh, I guess it makes sense.
Yeah. Now, on October 20th, 1872, Briggs arrived at Pier 50 on the East River of New York City to supervise the loading of the ship's cargo. 1,701 barrels of alcohol.
Well, that's a little bit drunk.
Yeah. His wife and infant daughter joined him a week later, and on November the 3rd, Briggs wrote to his mother to say they intended to leave on Tuesday, adding that our vessel is beautiful, trim, and we hope we shall have a fine passage. Well, on Tuesday morning, November the 5th, Mary Celeste left Pier 50 with Briggs, his wife and daughter, and 7 crew members, and moved into the New York harbor. The weather was uncertain, and Briggs decided to wait for better conditions. He anchored his ship just off Staten Island, where Sarah used the delay to send a final letter to her mother-in-law. "Tell Arthur," she wrote, "I will make great dependence on the letters I shall get from him, and will try to remember anything that happens on the voyage which we would be pleased to hear." The weather eased 2 days later, and the Mary Celeste left the harbor and entered the Atlantic. Now, while the Mary Celeste was preparing to sail, a Canadian brigantine, the Dei Gratia...
Canadians existed?
Yes.
Didn't know that.
Yes. The brigantine Dei Gratia lay nearby in Hoboken, New Jersey. Hoboken! Waiting for a cargo of petroleum destined for Genoa as well. Though Captain David Morehouse and First Mate Oliver Devereux were Nova Scotian... Devereux.
Well then.
Without the X on the end. Were Nova Scotians, both highly experienced and respected seamen. Captains Briggs and Morehouse shared common interests, and some writers think that it is likely they knew each other if only casually. Some accounts assert that they were close friends who dined together on the evening before Mary Celeste's departure, but the evidence for this is limited to a recollection of Morehouse's widow 50 years after the event. Dei Gratia departed from Gibraltar on November 15th, following the same general route 8 days after Mary Celeste.
Well then.
Now, the Dei Gratia had reached a position of 38 degrees, 20 minutes north, 17 degrees, 15 minutes west midway between the Azores and the coast of Portugal, about 1 p.m. on Wednesday, December the 4th, 1872 land time, or for those of us who, live on this side of the planet, Thursday, December the 5th.
Woo!
Sea time, which is, ironically, the date we're here. Now, Captain Morehouse came on deck. The helmsman reported a vessel heading unsteadily towards Di Gracia at a distance of about 6 miles. Well, the ship's erratic movements and the odd set of her sails led Morehouse to suspect that something was wrong.
What?
As the vessel drew close, he could see nobody on deck, and he received no reply to his signals, so he sent DeVoe and the second mate, John Wright, to the ship's boat to investigate. This pair established that this was the Mary Celeste, name on the stern, and then climbed aboard and found the ship deserted.
Whoops.
Now, the sails were partly set in a poor condition, some missing altogether, and much of the rigging was damaged, with ropes hanging loosely over the sides. The main hatch cover was secure, but the fore and lazarette hatches were open, with their covers beside them on the deck. The ship's single lifeboat was a small yawl, which had apparently been stowed across the main hatch, but it was missing, while the binnacle housing, the ship's compass, was shifted from its place, and the glass cover was broken.
Oops.
There was about 3.5 feet of water in the hold, a significant but not alarming amount for a ship of this size. A makeshift sounding rod, a device for measuring the amount of water in the hold, was found abandoned on the deck.
Well then.
Well, they found the ship's daily log in the main cabin. Its final entry was dated 8 a.m. on November the 25th, 9 days earlier. It recorded Mary Celeste's position then at 37 degrees, 1 minute north, 25 degrees, 1 minute west, off Santa Maria Island in the Azores, nearly 400 miles from the point where the Di Gracia encountered her. DeVoe saw that the cabin interiors were wet and untidy from the water that had entered through doorways and skylights, but were otherwise in reasonable order. He found personal items scattered about Briggs's cabin, including a sheathed sword under the bed, but most of the ship's papers were missing, along with the captain's navigational instruments. Galley equipment was neatly stowed away. There was no food prepared or under preparation, but there were ample provisions in the store. There were no obvious signs of fire or violence. The evidence indicated an orderly departure from the ship by means of the missing lifeboat. Well, DeVoe returned the report to report these findings to Morehouse, who decided to bring their derelict to Gibraltar, 600 nautical miles away. Under maritime law, a salvage operation could expect a substantial share of the combined value of rescued vessel and cargo, the exact award depending on the degree of danger inherent in the salvaging. Morehouse divided the crew of 8 between the two vessels, sending DeVoe and 2 experienced seamen to the Mary Celeste, while he and 4 others remained on the Di Gracia. The weather had been relatively calm for most of the way to Gibraltar, but each ship was seriously undercrewed and progress was slow. Di Gracia reached Gibraltar on the 12th of December. The Mary Celeste had encountered fog and arrived the following morning. She was immediately impounded by the Vice Admiralty Court to prepare for salvage hearings. DeVoe wrote to his wife that the ordeal of bringing the ship in was such that I can hardly tell what I am made of, but I do not care so long as I got in safe. I shall be well paid for the Mary Celeste. Well, the salvage court hearings began in Gibraltar on the 17th of December under Sir James Cochrane, the Chief Justice of Gibraltar. The hearing was conducted by Frederick Solly Flood, the Attorney General of Gibraltar, who is also an Advocate General and Proctor for the Queen in her Office of Admiralty. Flood was described by a historian of the Mary Celeste affair as a man whose arrogance and pomposity was inversely proportional to his IQ.
Well then.
Ouch! And as the sort of man who, once he made his mind up about something, could not be shifted.
I'm guessing he was well liked.
Apparently. The testimonies of DeVoe and Wright convinced Flood unalterably that a crime had been committed.
What?
A belief picked up by the New York Shipping Commercialist on December 21st, quote, the inference is that there have been foul play somewhere and that alcohol is at the bottom of it.
What?
Well, the
You're
20th.
telling drunk people do stupid things?
Oh, no kidding, especially with the whole boat full.
No.
On December the 23rd, Flood ordered an examination of Mary Celeste, which was carried out by John Austin, a surveyor of shipping, with the assistance of a diver, Ricardo Putnaro. Austin noted cuts on each side of the bow caused, he thought, by a sharp instrument, and found possible traces of blood on the captain's sword. His report emphasized that the ship did not appear to have been struck by heavy weather, citing a vial of sewing machine oil found upright in its place. Austin did not acknowledge that the vial might have been replaced since the abandonment, nor that the court raised the point. Putnaro's report, on the whole, concluded the ship had not been involved in a collision or run aground. A further inspection by a group of Royal Naval captains endorsed Austin's opinion that the cuts on the bow had been caused deliberately. They also discovered stains on one of the ship's rails that might have been blood, together with a deep mark possibly caused by an axe. These findings strengthened Flood's suspicions that human wrongdoing rather than natural disaster lay behind the mystery. On January the 22nd, 1873, he sent reports to the Board of Trade in London, adding his own conclusion that the crew had gotten at the alcohol and murdered the Briggs family and ship's officers in a drunken frenzy. They had cut the bows to simulate a collision, then fled in the yawl to suffer an unknown fate. Flood thought that the Morehouse and his men were hiding something, specifically that Mary Celeste had been abandoned in a more easterly direction, and that the log had been doctored. He could not accept that the Mary Celeste could have just traveled so far while uncrewed. Well, James Winchester, remember that name,
What?
arrived at Gibraltar on the 15th of January to inquire when Mary Celeste might be released to deliver her cargo. Flood demanded a surety of $15,000, money Winchester did not have. Winchester became aware that Flood thought Winchester might have deliberately engaged a crew that would kill Briggs and his officers as part of some conspiracy. On the 29th of January, during a series of sharp exchanges with Flood, Winchester testified to Briggs' high character and insisted that Briggs would not have abandoned the ship except in extremity. Flood's theories of mutiny and murder received significant setbacks when scientific analysis on the stains of the sword and elsewhere on the ship showed they were not blood. A second blow to Flood's report followed when the commission by Horatio Sprague, an American consul in Gibraltar, from Captain Schofield of the U.S. Navy. In Schofield's view, the marks on the bow were not man-made, but came from the natural actions of the sea on the ship's timbers. With nothing concrete to support these suspicions, Flood reluctantly released the Mary Celeste from the court's jurisdiction on February 25th. 2 weeks later, with a locally raised crew by Captain George Blatchford from Massachusetts, she left Gibraltar for Genoa. The question of the salvage payment was decided on April 8th when Cochrane announced the award. £1,700, or about one-fifth the total value of ship and cargo. This is far lower than the general expectation. One authority thought that the award should have been twice or even three times that amount, given the level of hazard in bringing the derelict into port. Cochrane's final words were harshly critical of Morehouse for his decision earlier in the hearing to send de Gracia under Devereux to deliver her cargo of petroleum, although Morehouse had remained in Gibraltar at the disposal of the court. Cochrane's tone carried an implication of wrongdoing, which, says Hicks, ensured the Morehouse and his crew would be under suspicion in the court of public opinion forever. Thanks, guys.
Well, not forever.
Not
I
forever.
don't think everybody's thought about it in many, many years.
Probably not. Now, things that make this whole case with the ship kind of fun to, and people have been tinkering with this for decades since. First thing that they talked about for proposed explanations, foul play.
What?
You know, evidence at Gibraltar failed to support Flood's theories of murder and conspiracy, yet suspicion of foul play lingered. Flood and some newspaper reports briefly suspected insurance fraud on the part of the Winchester on the basis that Mary Celeste had been heavily overinsured. Winchester was able to refute these allegations, and no inquiry was instituted by the insurance companies that had issued the policies. In 1931, an article at Quarterly Review suggested that Morehouse could have lain in wait for the Mary Celeste, then lured Briggs and his crew aboard the de Gracia and killed him there. Paul Begg argues this theory ignores the fact that de Gracia was the slower ship. She had left New York 8 days after the Mary Celeste departed and would not have caught the Mary Celeste before she reached Gibraltar. Another theory posits that Briggs and Morehouse were partners in a conspiracy to share the salvage proceeds. Again, although no evidence exists of the friendship between the two captains, Hicks comments that if Morehouse and Briggs had been planning such a scam, they would not have devised such an attention-drawing mystery. Also, he asks why Briggs abandoned his son Arthur if he intended to disappear permanently. Good point.
Depends on how much you like your son.
Yeah. Although ruffian pirates were active off the coast of Morocco in the 1870s, Charles Eddy Fay observes that these pirates would have looted the ship, but personal possessions, some of significant value, of the captain and the crew were left undisturbed. In 1925, historian John Gilbert Lockhart surmised that Briggs slaughtered all on board and then killed himself in a fit of religious mania.
Woo!
Lockhart later spoke to Briggs' descendants, and he apologized and withdrew his theory in a later edition of his book. Yeah, go piss them off.
Why?
Now, another piece that they look at is this lifeboat. Okay, Briggs' cousin, Oliver Cobb, later suggested that the transfer of personnel to the yawl might have been intended as a temporary safety measure. He speculated from DeVoe's report on the state of the rigging and ropes that the ship's main halyard might have been used to attach the yawl to the ship, enabling the company to return to the Mary Celeste when the danger had passed. However, Mary Celeste would have sailed away empty if the line had parted, leaving the yacht adrift with its occupants. Begg notes that it would have been illogical to attach the yawl to a vessel if the crew thought it was about to explode or sink. MacDonald Hastings argues that Briggs was an experienced captain who would not have led a panicked abandonment, writing, "If the Mary Celeste had blown her timbers, she still would have been a better bet for survival than the ship's boat." According to Hastings, Briggs had relied on the ship's boat for survival rather than the Mary Celeste. He would have behaved like a fool, worse, a frightened one.
Ooh.
Now, Arthur N. Putman, a New York insurance appraiser, was a leading investigator in sea mysteries in the early 20th century and wrote a similar lifeboat theory, stressing that only a single lifeboat was missing from the vessel. He discovered that the boat's rope was cut, not untied, which indicated the abandonment of the Mary Celeste was performed quickly. The ship's log contains several mentions of ominous rumblings and small explosions from the hold, although cargoes of alcohol naturally emit explosive gas, and such sounds are commonly heard. I had no idea.
Interesting.
He supposes that there had been more intense explosion, and in response, a sailor ventured below deck with an open flame or lit cigar that ignited the fumes. Yeah. Where's Fred? Well, he flew over the side of the boat.
But if that happened, wouldn't there be less boat?
Well, less boat, and also because they were talking about how much was still in that cargo hold.
Yeah, if there was an explosion, that would be gone.
Yeah, and there were no signs of fire or anything either. Sailor ventured below deck with an open flame-lit cigar, ignited the fumes, caused an explosion violent enough to dislodge the top of the hatch, what had been found in an unusual position. Putman also postulated that...
Just the top? I don't think so.
Yeah, postulated that in a panic terror, the captain, his family, and the crew boarded the lone lifeboat, cut the rope, and then abandoned the ship. Now, one of the interesting pieces that they talk about is natural phenomenon.
Uh-oh.
Now, commentators usually agree that some extraordinary alarming circumstance must have arisen to cause the entire crew to abandon a sound and seaworthy ship with ample provisions. Devereux ventured on the explanation based on a sounding rod found on the deck. He suggested that Briggs abandoned the ship after a false sounding because of a malfunction, perhaps of the pumps, and created a false impression that the vessel was rapidly accumulating water. Now, water spouts, for those of us who know what these things are, imagine a tornado. But take the tornado and put it over the ocean, where you got a lot of water. Now, what they're looking at is that if he had a severe water spout strike the ship before abandonment, could explain the amount of water in the ship and the ragged state of the rigging and sails.
But wouldn't things be more messy?
Well, they were already pretty messy. Because they had, 3.5 feet worth of water inside the hold already?
Some things were still in their spot.
Right, and that's what I'm kind of curious about, is actually how much of a mess would this water spout have to make to be more provable? Low metronomic pressure generated by the spout could have driven water from the bilges up into the pumps, leading the crew to overestimate the amount of water in the Mary Celeste and believe she was in danger of sinking. Other explanations are kind of weird because they were like a displaced iceberg. This is all the way down by the Azores. Icebergs don't drift that far.
I mean, it's a tiny one.
Very tiny.
And it hit the boat and it evaporated.
Yeah, poof. Not seeing it. Or a sudden submarine earthquake. Hydrographical evidence suggests that an iceberg drifting this far south is improbable, as other ships would have seen it. They give more consideration to the theory that the Mary Celeste began drifting towards the Dalabrat Reef off Santa Maria Island when she was becalmed. The theory supposes that Brigg feared the ship would run aground and launch his yawl in hope of reaching land. The wind could have then lifted and blown the Mary Celeste away from the reef while the rising sea swamped and sank the yawl. The weakness of this theory is that if the ship had been becalmed, all sails would have been set to catch any available breeze, yet it was found with many of the sails furled. Now, an earthquake on the seabed could have caused sufficient turbulence on the surface to damage parts of the cargo, thus releasing noxious fumes. Rising fears of an imminent explosion could have led the Briggs to order to the ship's abandonment. Displacement of hatches suggests that an inspection or an attempted airing had taken place. Interesting enough, totally different ship. In 1886, attention was drawn to the New York World when they had a vessel carrying alcohol had exploded.
Oh.
Same journal's issue, February 9th, 1913, cited a seepage of alcohol through the porous barrels as the source of gases which may have caused or threatened an explosion in the Mary Celeste hold. Briggs' cousin, Oliver Cobb, was a strong proponent of this theory, in which sufficiently alarming scenario, rumblings from the hold, the smell of escaping fumes, possibly explosion, could have caused Briggs to have ordered the evacuation of the ships. In his haste to leave the ship before it exploded, Briggs may have failed to properly secure the yawl to the tow line. Sudden breeze could have blown the ship away from the occupants of the yawl, leaving them to succumb to the elements, and this lack of damage from the explosion and generally sound state of the cargo, upon discovery, tend to weaken this case. Now, take a page back when I talked about the fact that they were still looking into this thing X number years later. In 2006, an experiment was performed on Channel 5 television by chemist Andrea Sella of the University College London, and the results helped to revive the explosion theory. Stella built a model of the hold with paper cartons representing the barrels. Using butane gas, he created an explosion that caused a considerable blast and ball of flame, but contrary to expectation, there was no fire damage within the replica hold.
Interesting.
Yeah, he said what we created was a pressure wave type of explosion. There's a spectacular wave of flame, but behind it, relatively cool air. No soot was left behind, and there was no burning or scorching. Now, as like everything goes good, fact and fiction become intertwined in the decades that followed. The Los Angeles Times retold the Mary Celeste story in June of 1883 with an invented detail. Every sail was set, the tiller was lashed fast, not a rope was out of place, the fire was burning in the galley, the dinner was standing untasted and scarcely cold, the log written up an hour of her discovery. The November 1906 Overland Monthly and Out West magazine reported the Mary Celeste drifted off the Cape Verde Islands some 1,400 nautical miles south of the actual location.
Oops.
So, yeah, it's one of these events that basically they, will just keep adding on, fabrications and details. So, until the point you don't even really know what the truth is. And, even Arthur Conan Doyle. Name sound familiar?
Vaguely?
Yeah. He was one of his early works as a 25-year-old ship surgeon at the time, wrote a story that J. Habakkuk Jepson's statement did not adhere to the facts, and he actually renamed the ship the Marie Celeste instead of the Mary Celeste. and even changed the captain's name. And the fatal voyage from 1873, so he missed it by a year, and was from Boston to Lisbon.
He was just changing up the details for insurance, for copyright reasons.
Probably.
That's it.
That's it. That's got to be it. But yeah, it's one of those cases where, you know, they like to experiment with the story, and it kind of grows legs. But as the things go, there was not a single person that they found on that ship, and to this date, the thing with the alcohol fumes and exploding, thanks to that chemist, you know, it stands to hold a bit of water. That apparently what happened with the ship is that they must have thought the ship was in worse straits than what it was. They grabbed the lifeboat and they decided to make a run for it, which makes me almost wonder what possessed this captain to do that sort of thing, because it sounded like the guy was pretty seaworthy and pretty knowledgeable on things, but...
And they were never seen again, right?
Never seen again. Not the lifeboat, not the people. They just vanished. Straight out. You effectively have a ghost ship. Now, interestingly enough...
All right, continuing on, because the phone shut down.
Yeah. Well, after the Mary Celeste was, put under new ownership, since the old crew disappeared, they sailed mostly in the West Indians and Indian Ocean routes, regularly losing money. Details of her movements occasionally appeared in shipping news. She wound up in 1879 at the island of St. Helena, where she had called to seek medical assistance for her captain, Edgar Tuthill, who had fallen ill.
Oh, dear. Goodness.
Tuthill died on the island, encouraging the idea that the ship was cursed.
Which it is.
He was the third captain to die prematurely. In February of 1880, the owners sold the Mary Celeste to a partnership of Bostonians, headed by Wesley Gove. New captain, Thomas L. Fleming, remained in the post until August of 1884, where he was replaced by Gilman C. Parker. During these years, the ship's port of registration changed several times before reverting to Boston. There were no records of her voyages during that time, although Brian Hicks, in the study of the affair, asserts that Gove tried hard to make a success of her. In November of 1884, Parker conspired with a group of Boston shippers who filled the Mary Celeste with a largely worthless cargo, misrepresented the ship's manifest as valuable goods, and insured her for $30,000. And on December the 16th, Parker set out for Port-au-Prince, the capital and chief port in Haiti. On the January 3rd of 1885, Mary Celeste approached the port via the channel between Gonave Island and the mainland, in which a large and well-charted coral reef, the Rochelat Bank. Parker deliberately ran the ship onto this reef, ripping out the bottom and wrecking her beyond repair.
Ouch.
Yeah, he and the crew then rowed themselves ashore, where Parker sold the salvageable cargo for $500 to the American consul. Well, then they started their insurance claims. Now, when the consul reported what they had bought was almost worthless, the ship's insurers began a thorough investigation, which soon revealed the truth of the overinsured cargo. In July of 1885, Parker and the shippers were tried in Boston for conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, while Parker was additionally charged with willfully casting away the ship, a crime known as barity, and at the time carrying the death penalty. Now, this conspiracy case was heard first, but on August the 15th, the jury announced that they could not agree on a verdict. Some jurors were unwilling to risk prejudicing Parker's forthcoming trial by finding him guilty on a conspiracy charge rather than ordering an expensive retrial. The judge negotiated an agreement whereby the defendants withdrew the insurance claims and repaid all they'd received. The barity charge against Parker was deferred, and he was allowed to go free.
Woo!
But effectively, that was the end of the Mary Celeste. She effectively hit a reef, ripped out the bottom, and never sailed again. But it's definitely an interesting ghost story that somewhere a whole crew completely vanished out in the Atlantic Ocean. And it wasn't anywhere near the Bermuda Triangle. So, but this big deal...
Aliens.
aliens. But this has been Joe for the Bearded Historian for the Bud Files, and Wayback Wednesday. You folks have a good day out there.
Good night, everybody.